Everyone remembers February the 26th and 27th, 2019. Those were the 2 days in which India struck in Balakot as retribution for the Pulwama terror attacks. And a day later, there was a big aerial dogfight across the line of control in which Indian pilot, Wing Commander Abhinandan Vartaman, shot down a Pakistani fighter jet and then crashed himself into Pakistani territory. As everyone remembers, he was taken as a captive. What more people know is how Abhinandan was then surprisingly released the very next day. India had bunkered down and expected that this was going to be an extended standoff with Abhinandan Vartaman virtually an official hostage of Pakistan. But no, as you remember, the Wagah border the next evening is when Abhinandan Vartaman was sent back to India. Pakistan had painted this as a big peace gesture. But the man in the hot seat at that time, India's High Commissioner to Pakistan at that time, Ambassador Ajay Bisaria, has finally broken his silence. He's done it in the form of a book called Anger Management, in which he details for the first time the real reason why Pakistan sent Abhinandan back less than 24 hours after he was captured. Take a look at this report.
अमेरिकाना उच्च एक व्यक्तिए एक निवेदन કર્યું કે મોદીએ બીજા દિવસે એક સાથે 12 મિસાઇલો હુમલો કરવાનું કરીને ક્યાં કીધું પરિસ્થિતિ ગંભીર થઈ જાત આ સારું થયું કે પાકિસ્તાને પાયલોટને પાછો મોકલવાની જાહેરાત કરી દીધી નહીં તો રાત કતલની રાત હતી.
5 years ago, Prime Minister Narendra Modi issued a stern warning to Pakistan, referenced in his speech in April 2019. Now meticulously detailed in Ambassador Ajay Bisaria's upcoming book, Anger Management, the troubled diplomatic relationship between India and Pakistan. India's High Commissioner to Pakistan in 2019, Ambassador Bisaria's book unveils how India's diplomatic and military strategy rattled Pakistan, leading to the release of Wing Commander Abhinandan Vartaman. Rewind to February 2019. Tensions escalated sharply with Pakistan after the Pulwama terror attack. Indian warplanes struck the terror camps in Balakot early on February 26, 2019. The Pakistan Air Force responded impulsively, sparking a dogfight on February 27th. Indian fighters were instructed to disengage, but they did not. Wing Commander Abhinandan Vartaman pursued and shot down an F-16 jet. In the process, his own aircraft was shot down and he was captured by Pakistan. Ambassador Bisaria shares the inside story that led Pakistan to release Wing Commander Vartaman. His book reveals India took a tough stance, pointed 9 missiles at Pakistan, ready to be unleashed if Pakistan refused to unconditionally release the Indian pilot. Terrified, Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan sent out an SOS. His diplomats called Ambassador Bisaria at midnight. Khan wanted to talk to Prime Minister Modi. The Indian Prime Minister was unavailable to take his Pakistani counterpart's call. Soon, the Pakistani Prime Minister sought peace, announcing Wing Commander Vartaman would be released. The Indian pilot was set free on March 1st. Had he not been released, India was fully prepared to turn its Qatal ki Raat warning into a reality. Bureau Report, India Today.
And India's High Commissioner to Pakistan at the time, Ajay Bisaria, who's just dropped dropped the bombshell in the form of his new book, Anger Management. Joined me just a short while ago right here on India Today. It's his first exclusive interview. Here it is in full, uncensored, unedited. And now for a big India Today exclusive. All Indians remember what happened in February 2019. The big Pulwama terror attack followed by India's Balakot airstrikes on Pakistani territory. The capture of an Indian Air Force pilot, Wing Commander Abhinandan Vartaman. And then everyone knows what followed because the pilot was released the very next day. What very few people actually know anything about is what happened on the night that Wing Commander Abhinandan was captured. Well, for the first time, a person right in the epicenter of things, right in the heat and thick of things, has written a book to tell the world what really happened. It's a book called Anger Management, about the troubled relationship between India and Pakistan, written by none other than Ajay Bisaria, who happened to be India's High Commissioner to Pakistan at that time. And he joins me live now in his first exclusive interview following the release of his book. Ambassador Bisaria, great to have you, great to see you. First of all, sir, congratulations on your book. Also, congratulations because I hear it's already a bestseller on the book charts. I'd like to start off, with the most telling aspect of a part of your book, which covers the night of February the 27th, sir. It's a night that few people need any introduction to because most people remember the entire sequence of events, the Pulwama terror attack, a few days later the Balakot airstrikes, the dogfight that took place the following morning on the 27th of February 2019, the skirmish that took place, the capture of our pilot, and then everything goes dark until Wing Commander Abhinandan was repatriated back to India across the Wagah border the following day. In your book, for the first time, Ambassador Bisaria, you've actually thrown light on what happened, and it comes down to a few phone calls that apparently took place from Pakistan to you. It looked like the establishment was pretty spooked, thinking that there might be an escalation from Pakistan's side. But tell us in your own words, sir, I don't want to give too much away because your book is going to tell the story. What happened that night?
Thank you, Shiv, for having me. It was a long night, as you said, perhaps even longer for Pakistan, and certainly a long night for diplomacy. So, as you said, I received a call that midnight from my counterpart in India, that is the Pakistani High Commissioner, yes, Sohail Mahmood, who happened to be in Islamabad at that time, just like I was in New Delhi. We were both pulled in after the Pulwama attack. But I think that was a fairly decisive night. As you said, Pakistan was spooked because India's coercive diplomacy was in action. There was a credible threat of the use of force and the use of missiles against Pakistan. That was well established. And the point was that Pakistan wanted to have that conversation, but the Indian ask was simple. Pakistan had escalated the situation on that morning, and there was a pilot in Pakistan's custody. India wanted the pilot back, and India was ready to escalate the situation with use of force, and that threat was very credible. So I think that was in essence what happened. A lot of diplomacy took place on the ground in New Delhi, in Islamabad, and in other capitals, but the outcome India wanted was what was successfully achieved in the next couple of days.
You know, the details that you reveal are mesmerizing, Ambassador, if I may say so, because they throw light, on the conversations that were taking place, on which hinged literally the lives of people of two countries. You talk about a phone call that you just talked about, from the Pakistan High Commissioner to Delhi, where he was seeking a channel of communication between the Pakistani leadership and Prime Minister Modi. And you very tellingly said, you know, that conversation's not going to happen at this hour. Can you tell us a little bit about that, how that conversation went? Why did they need to speak? They were really spooked, that means.
Well, it was certainly a reach out, an outreach between two diplomats, because I had a good equation with the Pakistani High Commissioner. We would talk to each other often, and our role was to try and help out in situations of crisis whenever they occurred. And he had reached out with the question. Now, you know, in diplomacy, multiple things take place at multiple levels, multiple conversations take place. This was perhaps only one of those attempted conversations through this particular channel. But the question was whether Prime Minister Imran Khan could have a word with Prime Minister Modi at that hour, and the answer was, please give me, after I had checked up, I made it clear that the Indian PM was not available, but there could be a message. If there was a message, it could be sent to me.
Did you try and, open that channel with the Prime Minister to allow that conversation to happen? Or were you told by the government that this is what you need to tell the Pakistani side? No conversation can happen until the pilot is released.
Well, I haven't gone into those details. I've only said that I checked and I reverted to the Pakistan side. So obviously I did check with the right authorities, and then I gave a response to Pakistan. So this is exactly in the nature of what we do. Diplomats are used for giving messages, and at that point of time, the message was, we want that pilot back.
Okay, this is very interesting, because basically what happened was a phone call came through to you, Ambassador Bisaria, asking, to facilitate a conversation between Imran Khan, then the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. You checked with the authorities and they said, no, this conversation cannot happen. So Imran Khan, in effect, was looking to speak to Prime Minister Modi, and Prime Minister Modi and his team basically said that conversation is not going to happen until the pilot, Abhinandan Vartaman, is released. Before I come to my next question, Ambassador Bisaria, I just wanted to play out for our viewers a very telling soundbite that the Prime Minister of India, sometime after this entire episode, had said during an election rally. He used the phrase Qatal ki Raat, indicating that if things hadn't gone the way they had, if Abhinandan Vartaman hadn't been released the next day, that could have been a Qatal ki Raat, or a night of bloodshed for Pakistan. Listen in to what the Prime Minister said.
कि हमारा पायलट ने जो एक खरोचपण आवी तो પછી દુનિયાને તમે કહેતા નહીં કે મોદી આ કર્યું. અને તમને ખબર હશે, અમેરિકાના એક પ્રવક્તાએ નિવેદન કર્યું હતું. અમેરિકાના રાષ્ટ્રપતિએ એક નિવેદન કર્યું હતું કે ભારત કશું મોટું કરી બેસશે, એવું નિવેદન આવ્યું હતું. અમેરિકાના ઉચ્ચ એક વ્યક્તિએ એક નિવેદન કર્યું કે મોદીએ બીજા દિવસે એક સાથે 12 મિસાઇલો હુમલો કરવાનું કરીને ક્યાં કહ્યું હતું, પરિસ્થિતિ ગંભીર થઈ જાત. આ સારું થયું કે પાકિસ્તાને પાયલોટને પાછો મોકલવાની જાહેરાત કરી દીધી, નહીં તો એ રાત કતલની રાત હતી. આ અમેરિકાએ કહ્યું. મારે એ બાબતમાં જ્યારે કહેવાનું હશે ત્યારે કોક દાડો જમાનો આવશે ત્યારે વાત કરીશું.
You know, Ambassador, in the world of diplomacy, I imagine, a phrase like Qatal ki Raat really leaves nothing to the imagination. It is hardly a subtle phrase. But in your book, you do throw light on, suspicions or intelligence within the Pakistani system that there were, a number of Indian missiles that were primed and ready and pointed at Pakistan. And, there was perhaps even a political willingness for them to be used. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because this is a shadowy place that nobody really goes to. These are frequently classified areas. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because the system apparently was on full alert and really expecting some kind of an Indian escalation, sir.
Absolutely. And as an analyst, what I would derive from that statement from the political leadership and from, in fact, the diplomacy on the ground in those days in New Delhi, Islamabad and other capitals, was that India was issuing a credible threat of force, a credible threat of escalating the situation in case the objective of the return of the pilot was not met. And I think that was exactly what was playing out. On the dynamics of what was happening within Pakistan, they are already available in the public domain.
Yeah.
There's a Pakistani MP whose clip is available, who did say that the Pakistani members of parliament were briefed in a closed-door session by the then Foreign Minister Qureshi, accompanied by the then Chief of Army Staff Bajwa, and the Prime Minister was supposed to be briefing them, but he refused to show up for that meeting. And as the MP colourfully described it, that his legs were shaking and there was sweat on his brow. So I think that was exactly the impact of this coercive diplomacy. There was sweat on the brow of the adversary, which means the message had gone through.
Your book is amazing, Ambassador Bisaria, because it tells the other side of what many people were given to understand about that day. Imran Khan had stood up in Parliament and made it seem like the release of Abhinandan Vartaman a day after his capture was actually some kind of a magnanimous peace gesture. But your book suggests completely the opposite. Ambassador Bisaria, as the High Commissioner, and like you said, you were in the thick of things, as we all know. Imran Khan had stood up in Parliament. You had MPs talking about their legs shaking. The Prime Minister of Pakistan made it seem like an act of munificence, an act of generosity, being the bigger person, a peace gesture, etc., etc. Whereas the sense one gets after reading your book is that the system in Pakistan was actually convinced from top to bottom, whether it was the ISI, whether it was the army, whether it was the political establishment or parliament, that India was fully ready to actually escalate, sir.
Absolutely. This spin was necessary. There were voices then, I recall, in Pakistan saying that we should negotiate based on the pilot's capture the terms of his release, and we should negotiate with India a certain change in behavior. So obviously that was rapidly shut down, that line of thinking, because India was not in any mood to negotiate at that point. So I think this point was well made and well understood. And as for this kind of spin that happens in Pakistan, often, in all conflict, it's important for the Pakistan army to have a notion of victory and to demonstrate a notion of victory, whether it was 1965 or 1971 or during Kargil. It was important on each occasion, in each little skirmish or conflict, for Pakistan to tell its people and perhaps for the army to tell itself that no, we have not lost anything to the Indians, we've won. And that is partly the reason why the surgical strikes were denied and why even the air strikes were diminished. So I think that is not surprising.
Ambassador, another point that comes up when one reads this particular chapter in your book is, the role of Western diplomats, particularly diplomats from the UK and the US. It appears that they also did have to play a kind of mediatory role in trying to, either convince Pakistan that India needs business, or try and calm India down. Can you throw some light on that? How big was that role? You were also a diplomat. You were there in the thick of things. What was their role in this, sir?
Well, I would say the primary role in such situations is a bilateral one,
Yeah.
a credible threat of force and a credible direct conversation. But every little bit helps, global diplomacy helps. And you've seen these conversations, including in Minister Jaishankar's latest book, which is that, there has been an attempt by Indian diplomacy to delegitimize terrorism apart from countering terrorism. So delegitimizing means that in the eyes of other observers and Pakistan's friends and other major powers, the use of terrorism has to be delegitimized. And these countries then come together to add their voice to India's voice for a country like Pakistan to change its behavior.
Your reading, Ambassador, I'm very curious, as the Indian High Commissioner at that time, how ready was India actually to escalate things? It was a sensitive issue. You had a captured pilot. It was a tricky situation diplomatically as well. In terms of security, many, many different moving parts. What is your understanding of India's, readiness, willingness, capacity to actually take things up the chain of escalation, sir?
Well, clearly India was ready to escalate if necessary. India was confident of the need to do so and its ability to do so. And equally, the other side was persuaded that India was ready to do that. And that element is also essential. There was a former National Security Advisor, Brijesh Mishra, who when he used operation when he spoke about Operation Parakram, which came in the wake of the December attack on Indian Parliament in 2001, would say that when you use coercive diplomacy and you have to have a credible threat of force, that threat should be so credible that you believe in it yourself.
Yeah.
That means not only are you willing to do it, you believe you are willing to do it. So I think it was, in short, a moment where India was willing to take steps.
I want to move a little forward to your time because, after Balakot, you had the entire elections. One of the first decisions that the government took at that time, Ambassador, was the abrogation of Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir. That was the end of your time in Pakistan. You and several other diplomats from the Indian High Commission were out and you came back. Tell us a little bit about that time. How did you handle the fallout of such a big decision in Pakistan? You do write about that in your book, but just tell us a little bit about the time when the bomb proverbially actually dropped.
Well, the day India took this decision on the 5th of August, and the decision was taken in India's parliament, I was summoned in by the Foreign Office, and they made a démarche to me about India's act of this illegal action and so on. And I presented at the Foreign Office India's point of view and trying to play it down, saying that there's nothing India had done to change the borders. It's taken certain administrative decisions on which Pakistan had no locus standi. But I think it was a mishandling of the situation by Pakistan that they overreacted to this issue, which has been an issue, dealing with Article 370 in Kashmir's autonomy from the 50s. It wasn't a dramatically new issue that had come up. But the fact that Pakistan politically reacted in such an intense way meant that they couldn't come back and reopen that door. They had to keep it closed, and the part of the reason was that Imran Khan at that point was inexperienced. Bajwa at that point, the army chief, was looking at an extension, so not too much intervening too much. So an inexperienced civilian politician was running away with the file at that point, and therefore I think Pakistan overreacted at that point of time and found it harder then to come back into a space where there could be space for diplomacy and finding a modus vivendi forward.
As a final question, Ambassador Bisaria, do you see a path ahead for, for India-Pakistan relations? Do you see, talks, dialogue of any kind on the horizon? Things have been to hell and back, since 2016. Where do you see things going? It's a broad question, but I'd love your perspective, sir.
Certainly. I think 2024, I would argue, is a time for cautious optimism, because we have the coincidence of two elections in Pakistan, perhaps in February, in India soon after. New governments, there has been an announcement of elections in Jammu and Kashmir, which can further improve atmospherics. So we could have a perfect storm of propitious elements getting together and going for 5 years plus without a major terrorist attack, which could give us reason to have a conversation and to look for a way of détente between the countries. So I think there's reason for cautious optimism, but this is an accident-prone relationship. Stuff happens.
Yeah.
But I really do hope that we move forward.
Okay, moving forward is a good thing to hope for, and cautious optimism is also a nice thing to hear for 2024. Let's see where things actually fall. Ambassador Ajay Bisaria, thank you very much for your time. Congratulations once again, sir, on your new book. I urge all of our viewers to try and get a copy of it and read it. It throws light on things nobody has ever had a chance to look at before. Thank you so much, Ambassador.
Thank you, Shiv.